You're listening to Keeping It 100 with Mel and Bruce, sponsored by the 100 Black Men of Las Vegas. What they see is what they'll be. I'm Mel Tiller, your host. I'm thrilled to be with you today. And my guest today is Alan Bigelow, and he's running for assembly for the District 5. He's a Republican. He's got some ideas, and he wants to share those ideas with you. Alan, welcome to the show.
Good morning, Mel. Thanks for having me. It's a real pleasure to get out and speak and I got to admit there's some really great things going on with the 100 Black Men program, specifically the mentoring and things that go on with kids. It's like you said, what they see is what they become, and the more of the I can attitude and positivity that we feed our kids, the better off they're going to be down the road.
I do agree with that, and it is an all hands on deck because we all have to work for the children in our community.
That's for sure.
You want to be an assemblyman. You want to represent District 5. Why are you running?
That's a really good question. I think the answer really is simple. My kids are raising my grandkids. I am at the point in my career where I can step away and go represent the people of District 5, the people of Las Vegas and the state of Nevada. I've got plenty of fight left in my soul. It comes from a lot of background with the military. I spent 24 years there. I've spent 4 years as a deputy sheriff, and I've been a firefighter for 19 years now. I get into people's homes. I see the problems, and I totally can empathize, and I get it. And so the reality is that somebody's got to step up to fight. The gal that's in the seat, I'm sure she started out doing things for the right reasons, but it seems like she's faded off in direction that is not as family oriented, as education oriented, and more people oriented like we should be, because we are representing the people. I'm not here to be Alan Bigelow. I'm here to be the assemblyman. And if I can do that and actually be a statesman instead of a politician, then I'll consider I've done a good job.
Give me three reasons why you're running. I want to talk about three issues that you have seen that bother you, that you think should be changed, that should be different, and that are not now being addressed.
Top of the line, first one on my list, anytime I talk to anybody, is education. The governor found $2 billion in excess funds to put into our school system. And it got voted out, and it got tore up, and it was Assembly Bill 400. The money was going to provide teachers' salaries, support salaries, school buses, provide for the millennial scholarships, the opportunity scholarships, so kids could get the education that they deserve. It's critical to the success of our children. It's critical to the success of the city and the state that we have these programs in place, because if we can't provide an education for our children, then the businesses that basically take care of our tax system don't exist. So everything really rolls around the education of our children. The second one is safety. We should feel safe in our homes. Our children should feel safe in our schools, and we should feel safe going to work. They're really easy. As a first responder, as a fireman and a former deputy sheriff, I see the problems. I see when I go out into the communities, I see the trepidation and the fear in people's faces because they don't feel safe. There's so much going on in this world right now, most recently in Israel. And we just recently were given a warning through, I received a warning actually through inter-office communication, to be careful, to look for that odd situation that was out there right now. This is the United States. We need to make sure our people are safe. And the third one is taxes. And you can kind of see over my shoulder there, I've signed a no new tax pledge. There's no reason to keep taxing our people to death. No reason to raise property taxes. No reason for any of that. Keep it like it is. We can find the money because the governor just found $2 billion, like I said, for education. That left a $1.8 billion surplus in the state funds for something else. So we're getting taxed plenty. So we don't need to be taxed anymore. And if we can accomplish all three of those things, then Nevada is going to grow, because when we provide education, businesses look at the community and say, hey, they got a great education program that makes my kids competitive in a world economy. That brings businesses. That keeps taxes low. That provides money for our first responders and the training that they need to have to meet the needs of our communities. And of course, it doesn't raise taxes.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about education. It is no secret that data says that CCSD is one of the worst school districts in the country. That's where it ranks. How can you help that situation?
One of the programs, so I'm working with a group of I'm going to call them freshman assembly people because it's going to be our first year in and our first time as assembly. But we've developed a program where we put new education, well, we actually reestablish old education parameters. For example, we teach children to play a musical instrument. That raises
Love that.
That raises our children's status in education by 4 points. We teach them through like a life experience course. We teach them to sew a button on a shirt, or we teach them how to hammer a nail or how to change the oil, kind of a life coaching course maybe. That brings them up another 4 points. So with 2 programs, we've already raised it by almost 10 points. Okay, now, and I have to really emphasize this. These are programs that have to be working in a statewide effort, and they have to go, it doesn't matter if you're Republican, Democrat, Independent, whoever you are. The education program is critical to the survival of our children. And I harp on that a lot because it's that important. If we teach them a trade, we just bumped them another 4 points. So now we're 13 points higher than we were. And all we did was change the curriculum. Not a big change, not a big thing to do, because the Nevada has a statute that says we're going to teach these things. So all we got to do is go in and amend it just a little bit. And then we can bump our kids up into the low, well, it's probably around the high 30s in a course of 2 to 4 years. Once we do that, we start working on things like, I'm a supporter of merit pay because my parents were teachers. My father had to go to school and get a master's degree plus, at the time, 32 credits to max out his pay scale. That didn't make a whole lot of sense to me because if he hadn't had his GI Bill, he'd have gone into debt for almost $500,000 for a job that pays less than 60 grand a year. The math isn't there. But if we have teachers teaching to a standard that children can reach, that's coachable, and that is easily defined, then all of a sudden our kids are starting to excel. I enjoyed going to a shop class when I was in junior high. It taught me the difference between a crosscut saw and a rip saw. Which end of the hammer, hits a nail. It was a good thing. It was fun. I use those skills every day. Our kids don't get that anymore. We need to bring them up to speed. We need to get them, versed a lot better in technical skills and things like computer programming, drafting, all these programs. And in order to do that, we got to make sure our kids have the base education. The sex education and kindergarten program that the school district is trying to do right now is probably one of the worst programs I've ever seen in my life. I would rather see them teaching children to read by 3. Because we can read, we can succeed.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about safety.
Sure.
The Republican Party embraces the concepts of the NRA. It thinks that a lot of folks ought to be armed. The Republican Party has embraced the Oath Keepers, Proud Boys, and now they're pretty much a standard part of the Republican Party. How does that fit into your concept of safety?
Well, I've never really been a supporter of extreme groups. I absolutely support our Constitution because I spent 24 years defending it. Groups that get into those extremes, I'm going to say at one point they probably had a justification, but then they kind of get off center from where they were. I don't think that we need to have people going around pounding through doors at the White House. I think we need to have people that are willing to communicate, to speak. You know, if we can just teach a communication skill, I don't have to agree with everybody, but if I can sit down and talk to them, I can at least come to an understanding. And I think some of those groups are way out of whack in that kind of area. You know, I just can't support the extreme viewpoints at that point, because then we lose track, we lose sight of who we're supposed to help. And it should be the people. It's not, you know, if society needs something, if they need safety and support in our schools, then we need to provide safety and support in our schools. I don't need, like I said, I don't need guys beating down doors in the White House, because that doesn't make any sense at all. I think that if we are able to identify those needs and address those needs as responsible politicians and leaders in our communities, then those groups tend to have less effectiveness.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about some national issues. We're going to go through these very quickly.
Sure.
Governor Ron DeSantis has started a war on woke down in Florida that's kind of moving a little bit around the country and getting some pushback. That includes the banning of books and so forth. How do you feel about Governor DeSantis's war on woke?
I have a unique perspective on it because my family is so diverse. You know, I have a stepdaughter that's gay and her partner is Black, and I love them both to death. I have children that are mixed of everything. One of them he's Black, he's Latino, and Jewish. And that's just a couple examples. So I think, you know, this woke agenda thing is getting a little heavy-handed. And I think it goes back to, let's talk. You know, when we stop talking to people, we stop meeting in the middle. We stop coming up with the best decisions. We come up with decisions that are slanted one way or another. And that may not be fair to everybody. And so I think we're better off keeping open dialogues, because there's certain things that, you know, you should be able to embrace. You should be able to embrace whoever your family members are, whoever your friends are. I don't care who is trying to push an agenda. I care who the people are. And if I can care for the people, then I think that's better than being woke.
Okay, all right. Let's talk a little bit about affirmative action. We know that the Supreme Court has recently overturned affirmative action, which now does not allow access to elite education to many folks. What is your feeling on that ruling?
I think affirmative action had a place at one point. I think our nation has grown. And I think going back to education again, if we get our kids educated, then they're going to get the scholarships and everything that they deserve, regardless of who they are. And I think that that's been something that's been missing, because when we look at it, and I know that specifically the case that you're talking about was with Yale, they purposely slanted it. And it took a lot of people, a lot of deserving students that were not admitted, that should have been. You know, they have a huge staff to student ratio. So why are they not adding students that are eligible to go? And why are they not increasing the opportunities for scholarships and continuing education? Because there's some important people that have come through there, regardless of who they are, but they've come through and fought through battles to get there. And if the student is able to fight through those battles and obtain the grades, there shouldn't be anything to block them from going to any school that there is.
So it's always interesting when I hear people talk about that, saying that it was needed at one time, but it's not needed now. There are a number of people who believe that affirmative action was needed because access was being denied individuals of color.
I would agree with that.
Okay. And so you believe that access will not, once affirmative action now that affirmative action has been overturned, you believe that there will be no problem with access for people of color?
I'm not going to say there's not going to be a problem. It's something that we have to grow as society. And I think that we need to develop it to where people are accepted on their merits. I grew up in a poor neighborhood here in Las Vegas. We lived at Pecos in Washington, and whoever knows there was trailer parks there. There's nice apartments now because, you know, Las Vegas tends to destroy its history and rebuild on top of it. But we worked hard, and both my parents worked. My stepmom, and my dad, and my mother, they all worked, and so we worked our way through it. I didn't see a lot of well, my mom was a single mom for a while, so she didn't have all the opportunities to excel that everybody else did because she had, you know, kids to take care of. Was it something that affirmative action could have helped her with at the time? Yeah, I'm sure it was, because at that point, you know, she was a single mom, where we had some of my, you know, growing up, my best friends were all the neighborhoods, and we lived as a neighborhood, and we didn't understand what affirmative action was back then. And granted, this is in the 60s and 70s when I was very small. Looking back at it, it was critical. It was critical to support the neighborhoods. It was critical to support the Black community, especially because there was a lot of prejudice, and Las Vegas was very segregated up and even until the 80s. I didn't agree with it, but it's what was, you know, is basically what was the situation. I mean, people like Sammy Davis Jr. couldn't stay on the strip until into the 90s. You know, it was not fair. It wasn't fair. There was no reason for it, you know, and God bless Mr. Rogers. When he had the mailman come in and they soaked their feet in a little swimming pool. He had a black man, you know, black man as a mailman. And he just, here, stick your feet in a time when there was a lot of racial tension. And lessons like that were things that I learned growing up. So I accept people for who they are. You know, I had two hard lessons taught to me when I was in Germany in the Army. Very early, you know, I was 19 and 20 at the time. And we had some problems with Iran and Iraq early on. And I'm on the train headed into for the weekend to goof off in Frankfurt. The guy sitting across from me was from Iran. He, you know, got to talking. He didn't say that initially. He just, you know, we started talking, and he said, you know, I'm here because I want to build a future for my family so I can get them out of Iran. And when he said Iran, I was like, whoa, wait a minute. You're a bad guy. Well, no, he really wasn't. He was a person. And we were programmed through the military to say things like to think like that. But at the same time, this guy still has a family to take care of. You know, we had Iraq right after that. Same thing happened. I'm on the train talking to this guy, and he says, I'm working here hard so I can take my family to America and be what I want to be in the future. And I can't remember exactly what he was trying to become, but he was working, both of them, working hard, working guys, family guys, you know. And we have to keep those things in mind when we start looking at the programs that we put in place. And if we need to do things like we did in the, gosh, I can't remember how long ago it was when we put in affirmative action. But when we put that in, it was needed because the situation wasn't fair. So we made it, or we tried to make it more fair. And now I think that our society has actually progressed enough that we're starting to see less and less of those obstacles get in the way, because you see, I mean, we got a Black woman vice president. Good for her. You know, we've had a Black president. These are things I never thought I'd see, you know, not because I didn't want it, but just the way society was going at the time. But now we've changed and we've grown as a people. And I think that's important.
Okay. I'll have to bring you back, and you and I'll have to have a discussion about all of that. Okay. Roe versus Wade. We know that the Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade, and in many parts of the country, abortion is now illegal, and there are many individuals who are trying to make the illegal abortion the law of the land across the United States. How do you feel about that decision?
Well, Nevada's always had abortion as a legal option. They just recently changed it a little bit, but it's a state law. It's part of the Constitution of Nevada. In order for that to change, the people have to change it. It's not something I could do as an assemblyman. I think, I am more pro-life than I am anything else. I think there's situations that warrant the termination of a pregnancy. For example, my ex-wife, our first pregnancy was basically stillborn, and there was no growth and no development, and the doctor said the baby was dead, and so we had to remove it. And that was for her health. And that's an obvious situation where a woman's health is critical to their family. It's critical to the relationship. I would not want to make the choice of a baby that is not viable versus my wife. And we didn't have to. I think we continue to go down the road, and I think that, women have the right to say what's going on in their body. I'm not a woman, so I can't tell that, but I have to support the law, and the law says that abortion is legal here in Nevada.
Okay, let's move to January 6th. There are a number of Republican presidential candidates who say that they would pardon January 6ers. Would you agree with the pardoning of individuals who participated in January 6th and were found guilty of criminal behavior?
Criminal behavior should always be punished. The crimes or the time should meet the crime. The time should meet the crime.
Punishment should meet the crime.
Yes, thank you. I'm getting tongue tied here. When somebody comes in and I don't support violence in any way. I've spent my life defending this nation so that we wouldn't have to see those kind of things come up, but they still do. I think that if someone is found guilty of a crime, they should pay for it, pay the price. They stepped up, they messed up. See you later.
Should former President Donald Trump be held accountable if he is found guilty for his involvement in January 6th?
Absolutely. It doesn't matter who you are, just because, and I'll use a imaginary term. If you have a king of a country that does something wrong and it's a crime, he's still held accountable. It doesn't matter. You can be whoever. If you did the crime, you have to pay the price. That's what the American justice system is there for, and that's why they try to make it fair for everybody. I'm not going to say it is fair for everybody, but they do the best they can, I think. And I think if Donald Trump is guilty of a crime, that he should pay for it too. There's no excuse. There's no exceptions.
Alan, you've been very generous with your time. So I'm going to leave the last word with you.
Sure. I've been a resident of Nevada all my life. I'm here to represent the people. I tend to be very accessible. I still have the same phone number I've had for many, many years. I don't have a burner phone that I'm going to throw away as soon as this campaign is over. I'm here to do the job for the people of Las Vegas, the state of Nevada, and District 5. I'm easily reached at my phone number at 702-427-5656. My website is votealanbigelow.com. My job, like I said, is to represent everyone. I want to be a statesman instead of a politician. And if I do a good job in my first term, put me in for a second one. And then after that, I'm going home because I don't want to be there for a career. I want to go play with my grandkids because they'd be just big enough I can start running them around at Disneyland or somewhere else like that.
Thank you so much for your time. One final question. Which Republican candidate for president are you supporting?
I think what's going to happen is the best candidate is going to step up through the process of the debates and the campaigns. And so I'm going to reserve my choice until then because I want to support our party's candidate, regardless of who it is. I've seen polling, and polling, I take polling with a grain of salt because it's not ever how the vote goes. So whoever ends up being our Republican candidate, that's who I'm going to support. I got a campaign going right now that takes all of my attention, so I don't have the time to consider one versus the other. There's a couple I absolutely don't want to see in there. Chris Christie is one of them. I just don't see him, representing our best interests. I'm sorry. It's just one of those things. But there's some very good candidates in there, some very knowledgeable people. And I think, as it goes on, I think that the field's going to be narrowed down to the best choices that we have, and then we'll have to pick one.
Talk to me about just name for me the good candidates that you are referring to.
Well, I like Swami a little bit. He's got some good things going.
Okay.
Nikki Haley's got some good things going. She believes that women should have a voice in their body, and I think that's a correct statement. I'm not so much of a fan of Governor DeSantis. He's done a great job of Florida, but I'm just not a big fan. Definitely not Chris Christie, like I said. Mike Pence, I'm kind of on the fence with him just because of some of his responses and the way he's approached his debates are a little bit antagonistic, I guess. So, I want a leader that's going to have that steady on. I spent 24 years and I had a steady leadership ability, and this was sent to me right here from Senator Harry Reid, and it was because I had a steady leadership ability, not because I was somebody that's going out there reaching for the stars, but I taught my people well, and I took care of my people, and word got to him in the United States Senate, and I received the accommodation from the United States Senate. So I tend to look at leaders how I led, and if they're the kind of leaders that's going to take care of their troops, and I mean by their troops, their people.
Yes.
Then that's who I'm going to look at. But I haven't seen all of that yet out of any of the candidates. I have seen some sparks of interest, but I haven't seen it quite yet. So I'm going to hold off on picking one of those right now.
Okay. And how do you feel about former President Donald Trump?
He is a handful for sure.
That's one way of saying it.
I just, whoever ends up, and I've been asked about him a few times, but the thing is if he's guilty of something and he does this and he gets put away for a felony, he's not going to be able to be president anyways. But until then, he's still, a candidate in there. And if the people choose him, then we're going to have somebody with some mean tweets again. And I don't know that that's always a bad thing, but it's definitely a colorful thing.
It is colorful, yes. Alan, thanks for joining the show.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys having me on.
You've been listening to Keeping It 100 with Mel and Bruce, sponsored by the 100 Black Men of Las Vegas. What they see is what they'll be. I'm Mel Tiller, and until next time, keep it 100.